Good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Bishop, and I'm the Wildlife Bureau Chief for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. I want to thank you for attending one of our 18 listening sessions being held this week in communities across Iowa. These meetings are part of our annual process for setting hunting seasons and regulations for the coming fall. We refer to them as listening sessions because that is what we're here to do. This is your meeting. We want to make sure the hunter's voice is represented in our process. We want to hear how your hunting season went. We'd like to hear what you liked about the season. We'd like to hear what you didn't like. Similarly, we'd like to know what you'd like to see changed and what you would like to not see changed. We benefit as much from being a part of this discussion tonight as we will from those official comments that move forward out of these discussions. We manage the wildlife resources in partnership with you, the hunters. As hunters, you provide valuable information through a variety of means throughout the year that helps us manage our wildlife populations. Specifically, we value the bow hunter observation surveys, when you report your deer and turkey harvests each year, when you participate in our turkey brood report cards every summer. And now this year, I just wanted to highlight one of those ways that you help, and that is for hunters who harvest migratory birds. At the time you buy your license, you've been asked every year as part of the Harvest Information Program to report your hunting activity from the previous year, and if you intend to hunt this year. This year, we're moving that system so that you'll have to fill out some additional information after you purchase your license. It's very important to how we manage our wildlife species. And the one thing I would like you to know is the more confidence that we have in the status of our wildlife populations and in how the harvest goes, the more opportunity we can provide. The less confidence we have, the more conservative we have to be in the opportunities that we have for hunting each year. So this is your opportunity to comment. We accept tonight, and we sure appreciate your participation, but we know not everybody could be with us. So please pass along to any other hunters you know that might have a comment for us, that we accept comments as part of our rule process via email, via US mail, and via voicemail during this time of year, but also we're accepting them all year long. In one way or another, we use all those comments in our part of our rulemaking process. The last thing I'd like to talk about this evening is that we have a responsibility to all of the wildlife species in Iowa, not just the species that are considered game species. While non-game species benefit both directly and indirectly from all of the work we do in the Wildlife Bureau and the hunting dollars that we invest on your behalf, we do have several funding sources and several staff within our Bureau who are dedicated to the conservation of non-game species. And we take this responsibility very seriously. And as active outdoorsmen and active outdoors women, we're betting that you do too. And so beginning tonight, we'd like to start adding a report to these annual listening sessions where we talk about our conservation efforts regarding non-game species. So thank you again for showing up. Thank you for your partnership. And I look forward to hearing the results from your discussions this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Bogenschutz. I'm the upland game biologist for the Iowa DNR, and I'm going to cover our population, habitat, and harvest trends for upland game species within Iowa. So we use a roadside survey to monitor our populations, and so you can see the statewide distribution map for pheasants there on the right, and the darker shaded areas show our higher densities. Populations circled in those red areas were much higher this year than last year, but in the remainder of the state, the counts were down. So when we added all the numbers together from a statewide perspective in 2021, we averaged 20.1 pheasants per survey route, which compared to 20.3 in 2020. So essentially no change from a statewide perspective. However, our hunters up in the northern part of the state probably saw much better hunting, and the folks in southern Iowa and eastern Iowa probably saw hunting that wasn't as good as a year ago. Quail mainly occupy the southern third of the state, and that's where we had kind of our bad winter, so the populations declined quite a bit there. And our best cottontail densities are also in that region. So we also saw a pretty significant decline in cottontail numbers as well. Our gray partridge are found mostly in northern Iowa, so they showed a trend that was kind of similar to pheasants. On the harvest side of it, I can't share numbers with this most recent season because we still have cottontail season open till the end of February, and we don't survey our small game hunters until after that season closes. But what I can share with you is our harvest data from the 2020 season and from the year before. The 2020 season, we harvested just under 300,000 pheasants, which was well above the 10-year average and actually our second highest harvest in the last 10 years. Our prospects for this coming year, with the roadside counts being what they are, I expect our pheasant harvest to be very similar to what we saw in 2020. And I would also expect our partridge and dove numbers to be very similar to 2020. But because we showed pretty significant declines in quail and cottontail on this year's roadside survey, I expect our 2021 harvest to decline in those two species. We had a lot of positive reports from hunters across the season, especially from northern Iowa, and you can see a few Facebook posts here at the end of the season. Generally, we heard good reports from most of our upland game hunters throughout the season. One of the concerns for our upland population statewide would be the loss of habitat. And so what this graph is showing is our habitat trends, grassland habitat on the left side of the figure, and the blue line. So in 1990, we had over 4.5 million acres of potential habitat. And if you look at 2020 now, we're down to about 2.8 million acres of habitat, or over a 2 million acre loss in that span. On the right side of the graph, you see our pheasant harvest and the red line in the graph. And so when we had over 4 million acres of habitat, we were routinely harvesting well over 1 million pheasants. And now that we've lost all that habitat, our harvest is down to that 300,000 figure in 2020. To just kind of put these numbers in perspective, if you look at 2005, just the recent time frame here through 2020, we've lost over 1 million acres of habitat within Iowa, and that would equate to a strip of habitat 3.5 miles wide that was stretched from Owenhaw to Davenport. So a big chunk of habitat, and it's the reason that most of our upland game populations are lower than what we've seen historically. One of the common questions I get quite frequently about our upland game is what impact are predators having on our upland game populations. Well, unfortunately, we have bow hunters statewide, roughly 2,000 of them, that when they're in the tree stand, they actually keep a diary of the number of predators they see when they're in the tree stand. And we've been doing this for a decade, so it gives us a really good trend indicator statewide of what our predator populations are doing. And we have the roadside surveys statewide, which kind of lets us know what our upland game populations are doing. So in this slide, you kind of see the major predators that we usually hear referred to with pheasant plotted against what our pheasant trend is. And you can see most of our predator populations are generally pretty stable, but our pheasant trend is up. In 2010 and 11 were some bad winters for us, and our pheasant populations were at all-time lows. But you can see in the graphs that we've generally seen a recovery in our upland game populations, particularly pheasants, since then, yet our predator numbers are the same as they were back then. So certainly predators don't seem to be holding down our pheasant populations from recovering from that bad winter. And so what really drives our population is that habitat trend slide that I showed you just previously. I'd like to wrap up with the potential hunting opportunities in the state on both our public lands and our walk-in hunting program, which is called IHAB. These are probably at the highest levels we've ever seen in Iowa, the amount of public land that upland hunters have available to hunting. So we hope everyone's taking advantage of that. The IHAB program is now around 40,000 acres, the highest we've ever seen it, and it receives very good reports from both landowners and our hunters. Just one last comment from a Michigan hunter there that was very happy coming to Iowa, and we hear that comment quite a bit this fall. If you have any comments about our upland game season, please send them to the email address noted below. We don't have any proposed changes to our upland game seasons for this coming year. So thank you.
Good evening. This is Orrin Jones. I'm a waterfowl biologist within the Wildlife Bureau. I have just a few topics to share with Iowa waterfowl hunters this evening. First, regards the population status. There was a widespread and pretty severe drought throughout much of the core breeding area of many of the birds that migrate to and through Iowa. This would have negatively impacted their ability to raise young, so there were probably fewer hatch-year birds within the fall flight this year. Anecdotally, the reports we heard from hunters on hunting success was that it was a pretty challenging and mixed season. This was also reflected in our fall waterfowl migration survey. We had some sites with average or below average counts of ducks, but then interestingly, we also had 5 to 6 sites that had above average counts of ducks. These sites with above average counts were primarily those with adequate amounts of refuge and food. So this is probably related to this population of birds that were able to seek out the resources they need to make this migration as they had done so previously. In terms of future seasons, for 2022, the hunting regulations will be quite similar to the 2021 hunting season. We are proposing changes to the Canada goose hunting regulations, and those are: a 3-bird daily bag limit will begin with the second segment of the regular season instead of November 1st. Second, an expansion of the Des Moines metropolitan goose hunting area to allow for additional hunting opportunity in September. And then finally, adjustments to several areas closed to Canada goose hunting. One last topic to share with Iowa waterfowl hunters regards the Harvest Information Program, also known as HIP. HIP is a requirement of all migratory game bird hunters. Beginning with the 2022 hunting license, there will be a new process to register for HIP. Hunters can register for HIP through the Go Outdoors Iowa website or the Go Outdoors Iowa mobile app. There will be a brief questionnaire. Once complete, you will receive a HIP registration number to be written on the corresponding line of your printed hunting license. If you desire a digital copy, just take a screenshot of that registration number. Step-by-step instructions are available on the Iowa DNR's Migratory Game Bird webpage. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vince Evelsizer, Furbearer biologist for the Wildlife Bureau. Here to give you an update on populations, harvest, and a few other things related to furbearers this evening. The first thing I'd like to talk with you about is a summary of furbearer populations for Iowa. As many of you know that trap or hunt furbearers, the fur market remains weak, unfortunately. The good news, though, is that it's a good time to get out there and take a youth or friends and family, because the trapping pressure is generally lower across much of the state. The other thing that's good news is that we're lucky. A lot of the furbearer populations are either stable to slightly increasing right now. The only exception to that is gray fox and muskrats. They've had a long-term decline in their populations, so that's something we're keeping aware of. Next slide is statewide annual harvest for the past 6 years. Please note that we've kept track of annual harvest going back as far as 1930. So I'm just showing you a few of the past years here, but in general, since 2013, we've seen less harvest. An example of that would be over on the left-hand side, where you see muskrats. Past few years, the harvest has been 14 to 16,000 muskrats harvested. However, the long-term average harvest for Iowa is 229,000 there. The exception with harvest has been coyotes. There's been record harvest of coyotes the past few years. They're more popular than ever related to technology changes, hunting videos, and the fur market. Their long-term average harvest is as low as 5,200, but the past few years we've seen harvests as high as 18,000 there, for example, in 2018. This is just a summary of fur harvester licenses from 2003 to 2021. For the most part, we've hovered around for resident fur harvester licenses, 14 to 20,000. The past few years, we've been around 14,000 or so. Then when you add in lifetime fur harvester licenses, generally 250 to 350 per year, and non-resident fur harvesters there, we have a total of around 15,200 licensed fur harvesters for Iowa, which is pretty good compared to some of the surrounding states that have less. Just an update on the fur harvester diary survey. Anyone that was familiar with this may recall we've done this survey for the past 3 years, and the survey was specifically designed to get trapping and predator hunting effort information. And those that volunteered to fill this survey out and send it back to us, just wanted to really give you a special thanks. We enjoyed working with you on this. So those of you that didn't get this survey, we just use licensed fur harvesters, a subset of those that have been trapping and bought a license and hunting and bought a license for the past 3 years. And so as a randomized survey was sent out to a subset of those licensed fur harvesters. If you'd like to view the final report and check out the results, that is available on our website, or you can always contact me as well. Okay, looking ahead, so far there are no proposed changes for the upcoming 22-23 fur harvest season at this time. However, if you'd like to provide feedback this evening, it's always welcome as it relates to the fur harvest seasons. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tyler Harms. I'm the biometrician and currently the deer program leader for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources Wildlife Bureau. I'm going to be sharing with you population status and harvest summary for white-tailed deer. Let's first summarize the harvest from the 2021-2022 deer season. Total statewide harvest was 102,810 deer, which was a decrease of 6% compared to last year. This was likely due to mild weather conditions that we experienced throughout the vast majority of the deer seasons, particularly those early seasons where we saw the greatest decreases in harvest. Those being our youth and disabled hunter seasons, our archery hunter season, and also our early muzzleloader season. License sales decreased by 1% compared to last year. We did see a 6% increase in license sales last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so the fact that we're seeing only a 1% decrease this year is encouraging, meaning that we likely retain some of the hunters and license sales that we experienced with the bump during the COVID-19 pandemic. Our deer population trend continues to stay stable to slightly increasing statewide and is still within our statewide goal of harvesting 100 to 120,000 deer annually. In Iowa, we're lucky to have a number of different independent data sets to help us monitor population trends for deer each year. Those data sets are depicted on this figure, but the important line to take note of is the bold black line that runs through the middle. That's our statewide population trend. And again, you can see that it's been maintaining a stable to slightly increasing trend in recent years. Chronic wasting disease continues to be a threat to our deer population, and I wanted to provide a brief update on our surveillance efforts for this disease last year. Statewide, we sampled approximately 5,000 deer during 2021 and 2022. That resulted in a total of 36 deer that tested positive for chronic wasting disease statewide in the wild. This brings our statewide total to 148 deer that have tested positive for chronic wasting disease since we first found the disease in Alameda County in 2013. and brings our list of counties to a total of 12 counties where we found the disease in the wild. The numbers below show the total number of deer that have tested positive for chronic wasting disease in each of the 12 counties, and the numbers in parentheses show the number of deer that tested positive for chronic wasting disease from this past year's surveillance efforts. A couple of other updates regarding chronic wasting disease. The first of which is that we're implementing special hunts in some of our CWD endemic areas, essentially areas where we've had the disease the longest and therefore have a large cluster of positive animals in a small area. These hunts have been largely successful at both increasing our surveillance efforts to closely monitor the spread of the disease and also remove diseased animals from the landscape, which helps achieve our management goals. I'd also like to mention a new online chronic wasting disease surveillance dashboard that we recently launched on our website that allows the public to track surveillance efforts by county or statewide, depending on which you prefer. You can see this dashboard on our website at our deer health page. This map displays where the 36 positive animals were detected across the state. The numbers on the map correspond to our surveillance goals in each county. We conduct surveillance statewide for chronic wasting disease each year, and we rely largely on our hunters for this effort. So we're very grateful for their voluntary contributions of samples to sustain our surveillance program. The black circles indicate our 2 new counties where chronic wasting disease was detected in the wild: Greene County in central Iowa and Fremont County in southwest Iowa. As always, we are proposing a few changes to the deer hunting regulations for the 2022-2023 deer season. The first of which is that we are maintaining the January antlerless deer only season in Allamakee, Appanoose, Decatur, Wayne, and Winnesheek counties, but we're adding Monroe County to the list of counties for which the season will be implemented. And as a reminder, this season will only be reinstated in each county if the number of unsold county antlerless deer only licenses exceeds 100 on the 3rd Monday in December, essentially after the shotgun seasons are complete. We're also adjusting county antlerless deer only licenses in 17 counties statewide. We're decreasing quotas in 9 counties, primarily in western Iowa, to allow populations to recover to goal levels, and are increasing quotas in 8 counties, primarily in central and south central Iowa, where populations are above goal. And this map displays where those changes will occur. The blue counties are counties in which we are proposing decreases to antlerless quotas. The green counties are counties in which we're proposing increases to antlerless quotas. The yellow counties indicate counties in which we'll be implementing the January antlerless deer only season. And the gray counties are counties in which we will maintain the buck only restriction during the first shotgun season. As always, we welcome your comments and input on these proposed changes, and you can direct those comments to the email address at the bottom of your screen. Thank you.
This is Jim Coffey, forest wildlife biologist out of the Sheraton Research Station. We'll be talking a little bit here about the species that I deal with under the forest wildlife presentation. We're going to start off talking about a very important species to Iowa is the squirrels. 2020 harvest was down again this year. We harvested about 76,000 squirrels. About 13,000 people were estimated to be out squirrel hunting this year. That's about 11% of our small game hunting licenses. We offer squirrel hunting in the form of 2 species, the gray squirrel and the fox squirrel. There are 4 tree species in Iowa, of which 2 are protected. Your possession limit is 12 squirrels with a daily harvest of 6. And we have a fairly long hunting season lasting from this first Saturday, or the Saturday before Labor Day, all the way to January 31st. The public has been reporting fewer fox squirrels the last few years, and this is most likely a response to over maturing timber. Gray squirrels like mature timber, fox squirrels like open timber. Historically, we've been seeing a decrease in the overall harvest, but that's directly related to the number of hunters that are out there. Our harvest per hunter has been pretty consistent through time at almost 6 squirrels per person per year. Turkeys are another important species in the forest wildlife section. Harvest was down this year from 2020, but that is something that we're not too concerned about since all states reported what we call the COVID response, which was an increase in the number of hunters out there with the ability to have some free time in the spring. Our harvest was at about 12,000 birds. About 52,000 hunters participated in 2021. The hunter numbers dropped a little bit again this year, and that again is probably most likely a COVID response, as that number is pretty consistent with what we've been seeing the last 5 years. Our fall harvest was up this year, almost 10%. We don't have a big contingency of hunters that fall hunt, but we do see about 7,000 to 8,000 hunters per year out there. Most likely, they are also deer hunting at the same time. We see that increase this year in harvest most likely through the fact that we had a good spring production or summer production of birds, and therefore there were more birds on the landscape. The population trend from our summer brood survey showed that 7 of the 9 agricultural regions were above the 5-year average. West central Iowa over along the Missouri River showed the lowest production. North central Iowa and east central Iowa were at the highest points in the state this year. Southeast Iowa did show its second year of above average production, and people were reporting seeing more birds in that area as well. This is a map that we break down of those 9 agricultural regions. You can kind of look at your overall area that you might hunt in or live in. But at the top, you'll also see an overall statewide production of well over half of our hens were observed with broods, a hen to poult ratio of 2.6, and the number of reports was almost double this year, which also indicates that more turkeys are on the landscape when we see more people reporting the birds that they're seeing. The last species we'll talk about is ruffed grouse. It's a big unknown in the state of Iowa. Our hunting regulations have not changed for many, many years. We see so few grouse hunters that they don't even show up. We don't even survey them anymore in our small game survey. Some of the same issues that Iowa is seeing with its grouse habitat is very consistent with other states as well. And most of that is lack of early successional forest habitat. We are always concerned about our grouse in Northeast Iowa, and if anybody has any comments or have been seeing grouse, we certainly appreciate hearing those comments, as well as comments about our other species, either squirrels or squirrels or turkeys. And you can obviously contact us at wildlife@dnr.iowa.gov. We certainly appreciate your input.
Hello, I'm Karen Kincaid. I'm the Wildlife Diversity Program Coordinator for the Iowa DNR. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the Wildlife Diversity Program, what we do, who we are, and how we are funded. We focus on the more than 1,000 species that are not hunted or trapped in Iowa, including birds, mammals, amphibians, reptiles, butterflies, dragonflies, bees, and other insects. We have 5 permanent staff, but we make great partners, and through those partners and our volunteers, we are able to accomplish so much more than if we were just 5 people. So what do? We provide information to land managers and other Iowans, sometimes by assisting with publications like this recent Mammals of Iowa book that you can download for free from the Iowa State University Extension website. Or this poster. We have a series of posters showing common Iowa species like these dragonflies. We help with species reintroductions. In the past, we've helped with osprey and greater prairie chickens, and we are currently in the planning stages for a head starting program for a state-threatened turtle species. We run surveys with DNR staff partners and also with community volunteers. Some of our volunteer surveys include bat monitoring, bald eagle nest monitoring, and frog and toad calling surveys. We are mostly funded through donations to the income tax checkoff, the natural resource license plates, and federal grants like the State Wildlife Grants Program. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you about bats. Why should you care about bats? Well, I can't tell you that. I can only tell you why I care about bats. Bats eat insects, a lot of insects, up to half of their body weight each night, and pregnant or nursing females can eat 100% of their weight in insects every night. In the US, it's estimated bats save farmers $1 to $3 billion by eating insects that cause crop damage. They also eat mosquitoes, although they prefer moths and beetles. And of course, they can fly on their own, and that's pretty cool for a mammal. Most of Iowa's bats need large trees, preferably with shaggy bark or crevices for roosting, and a landscape with water. They need a more open understory. Invasive shrubby species like honeysuckle can disrupt the bat's ability to fly and forage for insects. Iowa has 9 species of bats. 2 are listed under the Federal Endangered Species Act. That would be the Indiana bat and the northern long-eared bat. 2, the little brown bat and the eastern pipistrelle, are being considered for federal listing. Silver-haired bats are a species of greatest conservation need in Iowa, and evening bats are considered data deficient, meaning we'd like to know more information about them. Iowa is also home to eastern red bats, hoary bats, and big brown bats. Northern long-eared bats are listed as threatened, mostly because of a fungus called white nose syndrome that can cause their deaths. White nose syndrome is thought to have caused a decrease of up to 90% of populations of some bats in the U.S. We can't do much about the fungus, but we can provide habitat the bats need to recover during the summer months. We used bat capture data from our partners to determine how much of Iowa has suitable summer habitat for the northern long-eared bat, as shown on this map. Based on a combination of forest cover and running water, we determined that a little less than 10% of Iowa has the type of habitat this species prefers in the summer. We also have acoustic data. These are data collected with machines that record the calls that bats make, so no one has to handle the bats to identify them. We participate in 2 acoustic monitoring programs, one that is just in Iowa, the Multiple Species Inventory Monitoring Program with Iowa State University, and the other, the North American Bat Monitoring Program, which is nationwide. DNR, our partners and volunteers, collect acoustic data that are submitted to the national program. With our MISM program, we can model additional habitat preferences of some of our bat species. The little brown bat, similar to the northern long-eared bat, prefers forested areas, but it likes those areas to be mixed with other, more open areas. So while little brown bats will use a closed canopy forest like that depicted by the solid green in block A about 60% of the time, as the habitat becomes more choppy, for lack of a better word, as shown in blocks B, C, and D with small openings, maybe a crop field or open water or even a road, the probability of the little brown bat being found in the area increases until we can find the bat about 90% of the time in block D. This habitat preference is likely to do with the feeding needs of that bat. Crop fields and waterways have more insects that are easier to capture. The bats can turn in flight easier when there aren't a ton of trees everywhere. We work with ISU and the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation on a community science project that allows volunteers to help collect acoustic bat data. Those digital files are then processed by ISU or INHF and uploaded to the National Bat Monitoring Program. One thing we know from these data are that big brown bats are the species detected more often than any other in Iowa. The pink lines on this map just show where ISU works versus where INHF works, and the black squiggly lines show existing driving routes volunteers run every summer in Iowa. We will be adding a small number of new routes each year, so if you're interested in participating, look for our email newsletter this spring. Speaking of newsletters, if you're not already getting 1 to 2 emails diversity program each month and would like to, our articles range from species-specific information to announcements about volunteer opportunities to advice on planting native flowers in backyard gardens. You can sign up at the website above. Thanks for listening.